Great. So what we'll do is we'll start, and as we have people that join, we'll just keep adding everyone in. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Meredith Goodwin, Capital Project Manager with the town of Innisfil. And with me from Innisfil is Carolina Catillo and Paul. I think we have Paul Petticanen. And Ray, if you could introduce your team.
Sure.
I just want to, before we get into introductions for your team, because I'm going to hand over the presentation to you, Ray, is I just wanted to let everyone know how we'll go about today. We will do the presentation, and then if you have any questions, feel free to message, put them in the chat. They'll go to Carolina and myself, and that way, if you're not feeling comfortable being on camera, we'll take all the questions, and if there's duplicates, and then we'll go through them at the end, or we'll pop in and say, hey, Ray, we got a question. So feel free to fire the questions through, and at the end, we'll have more time after the presentation to do questions. So Ray, go ahead and introduce your team. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. I'd just like to welcome everybody to the second Public Information Center for the town of Innisfil Transportation Master Plan. The plan is considering the transportation services and improvements that the town should provide over the next 20 to 30 years. The objective is to provide a strategy for improving appropriate services, roads, transit, cycling, walking, and will include a capital investment strategy, policies, and support systems. So our team, we are RJ Burnside. We're working with the town team, myself and Gordon Huey, as well as Zinli Tu, who is on the call as well, and will be supporting us. This is the second of two meetings. It's being held, obviously, as a virtual meeting due to the constraints of COVID-19. Our first meeting was held on August 25th last year, when we provided a description of the project, a study objective, some of the existing conditions in the town. We provided some context to the study moving forward. There was a preliminary assessment of the transportation needs and opportunities and environmental, cultural, and social objectives for the town. And that, again, provides context as we move forward. We developed a vision for providing transportation services and infrastructure over the next 3 decades. This second meeting is focused on identifying and evaluating alternative strategies to address the growth needs and the strategic goals of the town. And we'll summarize the preferred strategy for the town, preliminary preferred strategy for the town to provide transportation infrastructure and services. And again, we're just here to seek your input tonight, and so that we can incorporate that and your thoughts into our process. And just as we have in the past, this is to allow those who are attending tonight to provide a little bit of live input and to share with your fellow residents some of your thoughts. To participate, we are using a sort of a polling technology called Slido. You can just hold your smartphone with the camera on over the QR code on the screen and click the pop-up, or you can visit Slido and enter the code that's shown there, 343704. So if as we go along, there'll be a few questions that pop up, and it gives you an opportunity to participate. The page, if you go immediately, it may say no polls active at this time. That's fine. The polls will appear throughout the presentation, and please respond with the most appropriate answer that suits that reflects your experience, and hit send. And I just note that if it's a long question and the size of your phone, you may have to sort of scroll down to hit send.
Great is just want to make a note that use the QR code on the left, because I think the one with the picture is going to the first open house. And if you go to the one on the left, the big one, that will go right to the second. So I just noticed that, and I thought I'd pass that on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Meredith. And alternatively, if you don't have a smartphone handy, feel free to enter sort of responses to the questions in the chat box. We'll be sort of documenting everything that comes in through the chat box. So in this next section, we'd like to summarize the master plan process and the studies that were completed that helped guide this study. As you may be aware, in the first public meeting, we addressed a number of background studies, identified natural, social, and cultural heritage assets, assessed the existing and future sort of needs and opportunities, transportation needs and opportunities. In this phase, we've also assessed the vision that helped guide the study. And we are moving forward now and through phase 2 and have identified and analyzed alternative strategies. And we're presenting that preferred strategy at this meeting today in Public Information Center number 2. There are the implementation of the recommendations will occur obviously over the life of the plan. And they may include phase 3 and phase 4 of the environmental assessment process for the development of design concepts and Schedule C environmental assessments, and the actual implementation, which involves a detailed design and construction administration of those projects, or acquisition if it is services. Just to recap, we began the study with a number of supporting studies. As I mentioned, the transportation system inventory, a natural heritage assessment, and a full assessment of the transportation needs and conditions. We assessed future growth through to 2051 based on information that's currently available related to the 2051 forecast. We've had to make some assumptions for the allocation within the town, and we will revisit that as more information is available through the MCR, the county MCR. We've forecasted traffic levels and identified different approaches to address these transportation levels and needs. And I guess following that, we did include a survey and asked your opinion for the transportation needs and opportunities and priorities through a stakeholder survey, and more than 700 of you responded. I'm just trying to think of the order of this. I think maybe the next slide is the survey results. Oh, I think there is a question in Slido. It doesn't seem to be coming up. The Slido doesn't seem to be coming up, but I will share, if you can see this, the summary of results. And just expand this. And if you bear with us, this is just a little summary of the survey that those of you who have participated in have provided to us.
Sorry, Ray, I think you're in the wrong screen.
Is it not? It's not showing up. My apologies.
We hear the music, but I think we're missing.
Okay. The music is fun, but that's not really what I was going for here. I might actually ask, I'm going to stop sharing. My apologies on this. I might ask Gordon to see if he can pull it up.
Yes, I can. I will do that.
We also had some participants join us after you started, so we might need to, for the Slido poll, when we finish the video, to go back to it so that people can get that barcode code for the Slido.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I'm going to actually ask Gordon if you could continue to
Yes.
share your screen.
Yeah, I can do that, and then I'll bring up the slide of questions.
Yeah.
It'll be a back-to-back. It's just opening up right now.
Okay, so this really is just a question to gauge whether the survey is what you expected, whether it reflects what your answers were or would have been if you'd undertaken the survey. I don't know if there are any sort of surprises in there. It was a couple of key points. Interest in electric vehicles, or certainly there is potential interest in electric vehicles. Some interest in work from home post-pandemic. Some of the issues related to road condition, pedestrian safety. So yeah, interested to see whether that really reflects what your thoughts were. Okay, so this survey is yeah, there's a question of who participated. So about 60% of you participated, and the results, are they consistent with your expectations? Either they were bang on or only one person responded. I'm not sure which. There we go.
Also, it's great to know we had 724 participants for the survey, which was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. So as we go through, we do see some no's here for sure. As we go through, definitely we'd be interested in hearing, what doesn't really seem consistent with your thoughts. But it is good to see that there was, as Meredith mentioned, very good participation, and that it does seem that the majority of individuals on this call seem to view things similarly. So maybe we'll move on to the next slide. We have assessed the transportation needs and opportunities in addition to collecting input from the public through the year 2051 through the following analysis. We used the town's transportation model and incorporated estimates of future land use to project traffic volumes, and these volumes were compared to existing and planned road capacity. We've taken that to identify additional potential road improvements, in addition to issues previously identified and capacity issues needed, or capacity needs. And some of these needs include additional east-west capacity in the Cookstown area, east-west improvements along 6th line. We reviewed collision data over a number of years to identify sections of roadway that have the highest collision rates, and we assess those locations to identify trends and potential solutions. And in addition to that, we have heard from members of the public and other stakeholders about where safety issues exist. On the next slide, we have assessed the sidewalk, cycling, and trail network together with key origins and destinations for walking and biking. We've identified opportunities for improved network connectivity for a high level of safety and security, particularly in the vicinity of Big Bay Point Road and in the vicinity of the future Innisfil GO station. The Uber transit system provided data on the frequency of travel to key destinations and between origins and destinations. Regular trip patterns were identified, and the need for the first and last kilometer of trips have been identified as opportunities to improve service. So with these sort of additional operational needs and opportunities for improvement, we just sort of went back to the vision of the Transportation Master Plan, which was linked to the town's vision, that Innisfil's transportation system connects people and communities, fosters healthy living, operates innovatively and efficiently across the town, and is environmentally and financially sustainable, resilient, and it provides a resilient system ready for the future. So that is sort of the vision for which we've identified alternative strategies and evaluated those alternative strategies. So in the next few slides, we identify the alternative transportation strategies to accommodate town growth and address transportation needs and opportunities. So, and we did touch on this in the last public meeting, that we've identified 4 strategies for accommodating growth, and in comparison to the first row, the first alternative, which is a base case, which is sort of environmental assessment process benchmark, where the base case provides no improvements to the existing transportation infrastructure and services. These alternatives were presented, as I mentioned, in the first public meeting. The first alternative is the status quo. The first alternative is the status quo, which includes transportation improvements identified in the last 2018 Transportation Master Plan, which addresses transportation solutions through to 2041. It did not address the growth needs and infrastructure opportunities associated with explicitly with the orbit community. The second alternative is a strategy that builds on the 2018 Transportation Master Plan with additional infrastructure and services focused on road-related improvements. The third alternative is a strategy that builds on the 2018 Transportation Master Plan with additional infrastructure and services focused on improving safety and walking for cyclists. And the fourth alternative builds on that, again, 2018 Transportation Master Plan, with additional infrastructure and services that's a little more balanced between active transportation, transit, roads, and emerging technologies.
Ray, we just got a really good question. Beside roads, are we investigating the use of natural corridors and creating new transit links through passive modes? And I can answer that question because yes, the answer is yes. We're also working with the Land and Lakes consultant, Think, and we're connecting these two. So there's parks trails, there's the trails that are on roads, and then there's trails that we're looking at in between and future trails, and to provide off-road connections as well. So through both master plans, we'll be coming together with some good recommendations on some trail improvements as well. So thank you. That was a great question. I'll let you keep going, Ray.
Okay, and that's.
I was gonna say, I've got a question over here as well.
Sure.
That question is, do we know how many people are attending, excluding town staff and council members? And we can take a quick look at that and answer that question as well. Looks like we have got 36 people altogether, of whom it looks like still counting. We've got about, looks like about a dozen here are not staff or council, and we've got an additional 9 people watching us on YouTube.
So I'll just moving on, and I think the first question to Meredith is a good sort of transition to this. As we've described, I think this illustration provides a little more of an understanding. The status quo scenario is the 2018 Transportation Master Plan. It gives an indication of the level of investment and focus on roads versus active transportation versus transit and travel demand management initiatives. The second scenario provides a little more investment in active transportation and a fair bit more on the road side. Scenario 3 offers a little more in active transportation, a fair bit more in active transportation, and a little more in transit and TDM. And the fourth scenario is a little more investment in all modes, roads, active transportation, transit, TDM, including emerging technologies. So with these different alternatives, we've identified specific projects, prioritized projects, and assess these strategies. And this slide provides the criteria that we have talked about previously: transportation service objectives, climate change mitigation objectives, natural and cultural heritage protection, strategic policy objectives of the town, growth and economic objectives of the town, and transportation equity, which is providing travel opportunities for those with physical or cognitive challenges or financial constraints or other mobility issues. And these criteria, again, were identified and extracted or interpreted from broader town policy. So for these criteria, we've identified measures for each of the criteria. So future congestion, serving commuting patterns for transportation service, reducing the use of carbon-based fuels to meet climate change objectives, for example, and protecting designated heritage assets, and natural, environmental, and cultural and archaeological features that have been identified through the environmental screening and scan. Measures also include infrastructure, services, and policies that align with the policy objectives of all levels of government defined in their policy documents, supporting existing businesses and growth consistent with the town's official plan and economic strategy, and the policies, services, and policies such as complete streets that accommodate all residents, contributing to transportation equity. So these are the elements that will help us evaluate these alternative strategies. So on the next slide, we just have a bit of a summary. These are supposed to be pie-shaped measures or assessment summaries for each of the criteria on the left side, assessed against each of the alternative scenarios. Status quo, which is scenario 1, the roads and highway focused. Scenario 2, scenario 3, which is safe and alternative transportation focused, and scenario 4, which is a multimodal strategy with emerging technologies. And scenario 4, or strategy 4, was the strategy which was scored the highest, and is the strategy that we are recommending. and the projects associated with that carried forward.
Meredith, I think you had a question about the survey.
Yeah, sorry, we got a question about the detailed survey results. And so the video is a summary of the survey results. So Gordon, maybe we can work on posting that on the Get Involved page, the actual details of the survey. So we will work on that and get that posted on the project page.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, and so the next set of slides provides a more comprehensive summary of the elements of the components of scenario 4, which is the multimodal strategy with emerging technologies. So the strategy is not all sort of on the backs of the town of Innisfil. It does rely on initiatives to support intermunicipal and interregional travel demand growth, which travels through Innisfil, which is appropriately addressed through provincial and county transportation infrastructure. The specific initiatives include the widening provincial projects, which include the widening of Highway 400 through the town, and the introduction of the 6th line interchange at Highway 400, and the provision of an alternate east-west link around Cookstown to lessen the constraints there. And we do recognize that with the provincial initiatives for Highway 89, that east-west travel in the vicinity will be increasing as a result of that. So that the introduction of the Bradford bypass without some treatment of Cookstown will have its impacts within the town. For Simcoe, there are a number of road projects, including Yonge Street widening from 2 to 4 lanes, County Road 21, County Road 53 and County Road 54, which are either planned within the next 10 years. County Road 54, I believe is beyond the 10-year time horizon, but those are all identified as improvements that it would be necessary to support that interregional, municipal travel.
Got a couple questions, Ray, and I think we'll just need to go back to the previous slide, just showing the different scenarios. Yep. And the question is kind of, how do you look at it in regards to the expensive, like the cost of the different scenarios?
So that's a good question. We will be doing more detailed costing. At this stage, it was a higher level of cost assessment based on the 2018 DC estimates and equivalent estimates of the projects that are coming forward. So there were just over, I think, $400 million worth of improvements that were identified over a 20-year period in the 2018 master plan. We're anticipating in the order of 15% or thereabouts more for these different scenarios, plus or minus. And that difference, based on the projects that we were considering, is how we scored that last row, the financial row of the assessment.
And then one more question that I kind of think maybe relates to the recommendations as a whole, but more so on your next slide regarding showing the the improvements. Is one of the questions is how have we taken in account our still very much active farm community with real large equipment in regards to navigating our road network?
We have been looking at needs from on a roads perspective, from a capacity perspective, and a safety perspective. So we have been looking at collision trends and any sort of issues that have been raised by the public that that relate to a whole host of things. So if there are issues that are related to accommodation of farm equipment on the town roads, we definitely would like to hear about those issues. The solutions are challenging, as with a lot of jurisdictions. The widening of the pavement base and the introduction of paved shoulders for some of those locations can serve multiple purposes. They can serve as sort of cycling facilities, but they can also better accommodate separation between farm vehicles, which often sort of drive in part on the road, in a part on the shoulder, and separation from that from passing vehicles. So I mean, that may not be the sole solution. It may also be issues related to speed or speed differential between farm equipment and commuting traffic. But we haven't identified through our safety review, which I think we have as a subsequent slide, we haven't identified that as a specific issue.
Yeah, and I know we haven't got to the roundabout part yet, but again, it comes down to design too, making sure that we incorporate those things when we get into the detailed design of these improvements. So thank you, Ray. Sorry.
Okay. So I think in addition to those capacity improvements, there have been a number. The strategy includes the road network improvements that were identified in the 2018 master plan to address growth to 2041 on town roads, for which there are a number that are identified here, including widening of 6 line and through 2 sections. A number of signalized intersections that are anticipated to meet warrants and help not only for traffic control and safety, but also accommodation of active modes. And as Meredith just mentioned, introduction of roundabouts, and 3 locations have been identified in that 2018 plan. And maybe I think that's a cue for another Slido quiz.
We also apologize. Some of the maps are hard to see. It's a lot of detail to try and fit all of Innisfil on a map. So we know it's a bit hard to see, and that's why we try. Ray's trying to explain all of these locations. So.
And again, we will have the slides posted, and as we mentioned, that we're not sure that everyone's ready to ask questions, especially if it's difficult to see the details. But we definitely will be listening out as people present any other questions or comments over the next couple of weeks at least.
While we're waiting for people to answer this Slido question, we do have another question in the chat. It is about bicycling, and it does point out that most of the plans are some time away. And will there be any recommendations in the report that will allow the town to make safety changes right away?
So I would say that the complete streets guidelines would be incorporated and would inform, pardon me, would inform the design of roads as they're going forward. We are looking in the active, pardon me, I'm sorry. We'll be looking forward for sort of quick wins for the cycling network. We have a number of, pardon me, shoulder bike lane facilities that have been identified, and we'll be looking to see where which of these improvements can be incorporated into the capital program, the next 10-year capital program. I don't know if that completely answers the question, but I do sort of note the challenges in getting some of these pieces of infrastructure in place to accommodate. One of the other elements of this master plan is organizational capacity review, and it depends on the jurisdiction. We're over the next month or so, we'll be undertaking some surveys of the approaches of other jurisdictions and how they set up their capital budget and how they prioritize between different modes of travel and different services. And that is something that we'll be looking at and providing some input to the team and to council for consideration. So, for example, I used to work at a large municipality in the GTA, and it had a dedicated line item in the capital budget for active transportation, specifically cycling infrastructure. And it was, that's how those improvements were proactively initiated and input.
I'm actually kind of surprised by the answer on this one. It's good to see that people are confident in roundabouts, so that's great. Ray, do you need, poor guy, do you need some water?
No, I think that was the problem. I think it just went down the wrong pipe.
You're on the spot. I feel bad.
Yeah. I'm good now. Okay, so back to the road network. In the 2018 Transportation Master Plan included a number of new road connections identified in these two figures, serving the GO station area, now the Orbit community, and the Alcona community, including Webster Boulevard extension, which is sort of continues, and subdivision circulation roads east of 20 Side Road and south of 7th Line, and including Johns Boulevard and Benson and Leslie Drive extension, as well as the 20th Side Road bypass or realignment. So in addition to those improvements, based on our forecasts, we've identified additional opportunities to address capacity improvements on town roads and resolve operational needs, anticipated operational needs, including the widening of 6th Line to 4 lanes. And as we have been made aware that the timing of the Orbit is a long-term development, and the need to address those long-term potential needs extend beyond the 2051 time horizon of this study. So we have also identified the likely need for protection of 6 lanes in the ultimate term and in active transportation. And I think we will be looking in more detail at that and those needs.
We have a couple questions, and one is about roundabouts. So I just didn't want you to go too far, because I think we might just need to go back to that slide back that showed the roundabouts. One more that's showing the recommendations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a roundabout on the 25th. We've got these. Is the 20th Side Road roundabout? Is that the one for 25th? The one question was, is there two? Are all those 3 roundabouts on 20th, or is there 2 on 20th? The question was, is there one at 9th and another at Webster? But I think there was, because there was a 25th roundabout. So I'm just a couple questions about the roundabouts recommendations there.
Yeah, 9th and 6th, and I'm going to ask, I don't know, Gordon, if you could help.
Yeah, I think the roundabout recommendations are mainly on 20th. The other circles, I know it's hard to see, but they're mainly either signalization or other safety intersection improvements.
Yeah, and there is current projects as well that were part of the previous master plan for 25th and Big Bay Point, 15th and 9th, and then Webster at 6 already has a roundabout. Thanks, sorry. And then I got one more question, sorry, before you go ahead, about passive and active transportation. So could you define the difference between active and passive transportation? I thought the question is, I thought anything with motors is active, and you seem to include both bicycles as active in the descriptions.
Okay, so active is active, I think, is the other way around. I'm not exactly sure the wording of the question, but active is walking and cycling and rolling and anything that involves physical sort of exertion. Which is differentiated from being a driver or a passenger of a vehicle. And active transportation over the last 20 years or longer has become a very important, not only transportation mode, but also lifestyle focus of municipalities. I think it was, as most are aware. But it really is anything that is physically, requires some level of physical exertion. Okay, and I think we were, so we were, partway through this 6th line. We talked about 6th line. On 14th line, it has been identified that certainly in the need for east-west capacity in the vicinity of Cookstown, this study is being coordinated as best as we can with the adjacent municipalities. New Tecumseh has identified improvements to 14th line, including a widening of the section a ways to the west, and then reconstructing to a paved facility through and approaching the boundary with Innisfil. So that route will be seeing higher volumes as a result, and there is you're seeing that there will be a need as that traffic grows to do the same on the Innisfil side, at least to 27.
There's a question specifically about Orbit, and if we're looking at Orbit through the full build out of Orbit in this transportation master plan. And yes, we are, as well as the Orbit is actually going through a secondary plan process right now, which is to be completed, I believe, next year. So we'll work with editing to make sure that Orbit is incorporated into this TMP way prior to the next transportation master plan update. So yeah.
Just in that same area, in the Cookstown area, our forecast did identify some constraints on the section of King Street south of Cookstown, and it is a little more of a micro sort of analysis that is necessary, that's needed to, or is recommended for consideration of that section of road. We understand that that the operation of the road system is a balance between parking and traffic capacity and accommodation of shoppers and even streetscape and sense of place within the town, and that we are suggesting that there be some element of review of those priorities and those needs, because it is a much more complex component than some of the other road capacity opportunities where there is right-of-way available and there's perhaps less of an impact associated with making changes. And the last section that we had is the sort of northerly section of 20th Side Road, and the need for a 4-lane cross section and active transportation through that section. So I didn't sort of highlight it, but this map does show those sections and those links of the road network that are constrained in sort of red and dark red colors, and to a lesser degree orange colors. And that really is the output from the transportation model that's been developed and updated for this study. In terms of active transportation, the 2018 Transportation Master Plan identified new infrastructure that accommodates cyclists, that includes bike lanes on Webster and Johns, some of which has been implemented, planned multi-use trails that are shown in the blue dashes on this slide, and paved shoulder cycling facilities shown in yellow dashes. This may sort of include further study of potential cycling routes sort of along Lake Simcoe. Then in the dark red dashes along the lake may take the form of sort of shared facilities or share-o with signage and possibly share-o markings to accommodate connectivity, at least in part along the lake. And we have. Yep.
If you could go back to the question, there was a question about Cookstown and you know, some of the existing traffic and parking issues that they have. And I think it was just generally a comment that the theater in the facility of King Street South has no parking lot and has caused some parking issues pre-COVID. So that was just a comment related to that one.
Thank you.
And we're also getting a question about these maps and if they'll be available on the site, and they will be, so that you can, I know, as I said, it is hard to see everything, but we'll make sure that everything gets loaded onto the site so that you can zoom in and see all these maps. So thank you. One more question, sorry.
Okay.
There's a couple, and I'll hold off on one of them because there's a good one, but I think I'll just wait for that one a bit. But there, sorry. Will there be any delineation between bike lanes and vehicles along the 25th aside from the painted lines? And I believe that we're doing a multi-use trail on 25th. So that to completely separate the bike from the road on that project. And that's correct. Bobby Joe is a project manager, and she's in this meeting, and she says that is correct, that the trail is being designed right now. Sorry, Ray. We keep interrupting you.
No. I mean, it should be more of this kind of discussion, and you know, even if it's somewhat controlled, I think that's helpful for us. And again, we're here to present, but to listen to the comments and questions. On this slide, we just sort of highlight the study. How the study has identified additional opportunities for active transportation connections, accommodating cyclists, and this is more sort of multimodal, is not just purely walking, including upgrading from paved shoulders to multi-use paths along Big Bay Point, between 20th Side Road and the waterfront. And introducing paved shoulders on other sections of town roads, 10th line between 10th Side Road and 20th Side Road, 4th line west of Churchill to 27, and introducing multi-use paths along 20th Side Road between 9th line and Big Bay Point. There are a few others, multi-use trails on the south side, and the sidewalk along the north side of 5th line between Yonge Street and 20th Side Road, and construction of paved shoulders along 3rd line between 20th Side Road and Harbor Street, and Harbor Street between 3rd line and 4th line. We've also sort of looked at urbanization of sidewalks, and we have another slide that specifically speaks to that. and as I mentioned, that the red lines, I think that is another sort of initiative that will be looked at in part with the Lake and Land study, opportunities for connectivity for active transportation along the lake. And in terms of sidewalks, there are opportunities for improving connectivity of sidewalks that was assessed and to improve pedestrian mobility and safety with new sidewalks as illustrated on this map on slide 29. We're focusing on continuity of routes, connections to key destinations, including schools, and links to the future GO station. These projects, obviously, there are quite a number of stretches along here would need to be prioritized over the next number of years, next 20, well, certainly over the next 20 years or so. And we did talk a little bit about complete streets policies, and that question. There's a question about, how do we sort of implement more quickly, but the design projects that are underway and the future design projects, even reconstructions, would follow the town's complete street policy, which we are looking at and reviewing design practices, incorporating some of the changes that have occurred with policy documents, including the most recent OTM Ontario Traffic Manual book 18, not a great title, but it's basically the cycle design guideline for Ontario, and other streetscape and maintenance requirement considerations for the design of town roads. And I think we may have another question. We're interested in how the provision of bicycle facilities affects your travel characteristics and experiences, and we'd like to know your outlook, and sort of share with your fellow residents your thoughts on how these facilities affect you.
We have a question about the realignment, the 20th side road. So the 2018 master plan identified a number of road improvements, realignments in Alcona area, including the 20th side road bypass. At this time, the alignment is simply a line on the map. Will the 2021 update provide more direction, details as to preferred alignment and potential impacts of GO separations, or will these be subject to further study through project-specific Class EAs? As the abutting lands continue to develop, implications can be significant depending on the ultimate alignment and timing of such.
We would still have to look at the information that's available on that specific configuration. We are addressing the first two phases of the environmental assessment process, which is sort of need justification and preferred solution. That preferred solution varies from the type of facility, the number of lanes of the facility, and the general arrangement of the facility. That for sure we would be considering. The actual design of the facility would really still have to seek approval through a Schedule C EA, which would be getting into fairly significant details about property implications and environmental implications and cost. So I think we'll take depending on the information that's available, we may be able to take it a step further, but they're still in the Schedule CEA would still have to deal with a fair bit of the details. Is that fair, Meredith? I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's what I was going to say. How I would have answered it, right?
Okay.
Okay, I have one more question. Since we're on cycling, and it's obvious that people would feel more comfortable cycling if there were additional bike lanes. So the question is, would the dedicated bike lanes be separated by curb buffer from vehicle traffic and the pedestrian sidewalk?
That is a good question. And when we talked about the complete streets, I think, this question probably highlights, maybe we could go to the slide. So, yeah,
Great.
so
Yep.
in this slide
Perfect.
here, there is one thing that's noticeably different than the conditions that we saw half a dozen years ago. In painted bike lanes, buffered bike lanes, which is now the new normal, as opposed to just conventional bike lanes with a line. Those elements, I think, we would highlight and probably provide a toolbox for the town to consider and identify those facilities that offer sort of a higher degree of protection. So cycle tracks, for example, in urbanized areas may be part of this, may be part of a solution or a preferred solution. Buffered bike lanes for sure. But I would say that with each corridor, no two corridors are the same. There are unique constraints. There are right-of-way constraints. And but if we provide a toolbox with some priorities or preferences, that would help the review and implementation of each type of facility. So, for example, this example we have here, I think it makes sense. It looks as though that there's continuity of route. There's enough right of way. The parking is integrated. There may be other corridors where the corridor itself is being fed by a facility on one side, a multi-use trail. So you'd have to decide whether it makes more sense to have both directions of travel on one side or on both sides. You may have environmental features and that sort of thing.
And this isn't to show us exactly how it would be. It's an ideal situation. So these, some of the lanes would change a bit, depending on the situation. That was a question, so I'm just answering it.
Okay.
One other question is if we could, when we do the updates to the maps, if we could show schools, on some of the maps, because schools connect to trails, paths, and pedestrian walkways, and some roundabouts are confusing for younger children, so school-age children. So we should have an idea of where they're going, and some educational pieces to that too.
And just to add to that, that's a great idea, because a lot of the recommendations for the active transportation facilities were considering the locations of the schools to provide safer conditions for students to get to those varying locations.
Thanks.
I think we're a couple of slides now. The preliminary preferred plan includes the development and implementation of a pedestrian crossing policy. The policy defines the practice for installation of new pedestrian crossings, and whether they're traffic signals or PXOs, pedestrian crossovers, or stop control, or school crossings, or uncontrolled crossings. These types of features are documented, in the approaches and methodologies are documented in another manual called the Ontario Traffic Manual Book 15, also a great title, which focuses on pedestrian crossovers. I was involved in the first OTM book, the writing of the first OTM book 15. And one of the key elements is defining the methodology for selecting crossing types and controlled crossings. But the book does recognize that each jurisdiction is different and has different expectations, and it's good to have the public understand what is expected at approaches, so to have some level of consistency across the jurisdiction. So we have worked away on a draft policy, which we will share. It takes into consideration the OTM book guidelines, but also recognizes the characteristics and some of the needs associated with the town. And Gordon was just talking about and the question came through about school sites, and we have specifically plotted those. We haven't shown them in this slide deck, but we do have those locations and have incorporated the identified locations or future crossing locations with that in mind. And we're also sort of recognize the design, the need for design for the diversity of pedestrian needs and abilities, whether it's cognitive or age or mobility impaired individuals. So that practice is a sort of a guideline for town staff to implement. It will include sort of a priority list of locations for future crossing features. And in terms of the plan, this plan, as is proposed, has reviewed the existing and future transit demand and identified opportunities for improved transit service that builds upon the Uber partnership, looking sort of 30 years into the future. We're looking at the key origin and destination travel points identified through data provided by Uber. And we've also looked at planned and ongoing development. So we are using that information and that data to forecast where trends are today and where they may go in the future. And obviously there's a high linkage with the Barrie GO station as a key destination. We have an understanding of how that will change when the Innisfil GO station is constructed. We understand some of the key destinations that we've identified here on this map. The Innisfil Heights employment area, Innisfil Beach, some other locations which that's not really fully served by transit yet, by the Uber transit yet, such as Friday Harbor, and we have heard input on that, as well as future sites like the new hospital. So we've looked at opportunities. We are in the process of sort of updating and forecasting transit demand, again, extrapolating from the Uber demand plus the new locations. And we've sort of identified opportunities to improve service, make it more reliable for those key origins and destinations, whether that is partnerships with Metrolinx or with Simcoe Links service, or whether that is either service that's additional service that's provided by the town, or even incentives that increase the supply of drivers for Uber. Service plans are typically done, transit service plans are typically done for sort of traditional service, transit service providers on a sort of a 5-year cycle. This plan could sort of lay the groundwork for that, with updates as transit demand grows, hopefully grows, and especially post-pandemic, to see where increases in demand are occurring. But the Uber data that's being provided is unique in that you have that much more detail than a traditional transit service provider. And then on the safety side, we undertook a network screening, a safety review of collision rates to identify what we call hotspots and potential problem locations. This is supplemented by issues raised by stakeholders through the course of the study. We propose a sort of a regular update of this process and follow-up safety reviews for those locations that are identified, and that's commonly done with some, sort of tools, often in-house by municipal staff. We've identified 3 locations worth investigating further. 10th Side Road north of Second Line, and that, I don't know if you recall, it's in the vicinity, and there's a little blip there on that sort of bubble. That bubble there. There is a sort of a horizontal curve in the roadway there. There are a number of fundamentally sort of run off the road single vehicle crashes that may be addressed through signage or markings, additional signage or markings or flashers or the like. But that would be something that either the staff would undertake, or they could retain somebody to develop a simple implementation plan. Other locations are Innisfil Beach Road east of 20th Side Road, and Innisfil Beach Road and St. John's. So, we will identify some of the characteristics of these locations, but if others are raised through the process, those can be considered as well. And again, how these types of treatments are resolved. I mean, it would be beneficial. Many jurisdictions have a sort of a dedicated either operations budget or even capital budget to address safety related improvements.
Question: is the intersection at 20th included in these safety related improvements?
Sorry, the intersection, sorry?
The intersection at IBR and 20th. I think the answer is yes.
Yes, yep. And for that intersection, mostly angled turning rear end accidents, related to the intersection potentially, but I think that would require a little more site observations and the typical traffic safety review to get more details on that location. And then the last component of the strategy is accommodation of emerging technologies and promotion and leveraging of emerging technologies. The first mile, last mile is an important component. The town has been involved, in the Share Cycle program, which was launched, I guess, just before the last TMP. There may be an opportunity for further programs or similar programs, and the shared bike or rent a bike initiatives are quite popular again for first mile and last mile, but definitely something that can be incorporated with the GO station as it's established. It was noted that 70% of respondents in the first public open house survey were very interested or somewhat interested in bike share or e-scooters. So it's definitely something to document and identify. And again, the key locations for potential benefit are along the lakefront, and the lake and land folks may have more thoughts along that, and definitely for the future GO station. And in terms of each EV charging, there are policies that can be developed that incorporate L2 and integrated into developments. And again, we noted that vehicle charging was identified, and despite the fact that the majority, the vast, surprisingly high percentage of respondents are considering electric vehicles as their next vehicle. There was a obvious barrier in the survey to EVs, and that was availability of charging. So that was our process. That was our evaluation and our recommended strategy as it stands. And we recognize that this is a sort of a high level summary, but we will be providing this information on the website, and we will be providing more details as we go, and it will be incorporated into the ultimate, the details will be incorporated into the ultimate plan. But you know, these are the elements of the preliminary preferred transportation master plan, but we are interested in your thoughts and questions before we finalize the plan. Again, we recognize that you may not have you know, all of your questions tonight. We may not have all of the answers tonight, but please feel free to ask any other questions tonight, or if you want to share them over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it seems like we've gotten through most of the questions that have came through, but this is also a good point to say, you know, this is going to be live streamed on YouTube, and will be recorded and played on YouTube. So for those people that couldn't make the meeting, our contact information is there, and we're welcome for more questions at any time. So thank you.
I do have one question and it is asking, when do we anticipate the final report will go to council?
Good question. we are we still have a fair bit of documentation to prepare over the next, I would say, 2 months. And the costing as well is a big piece, which we still have to get back into and refine, and it's important to get right. So we are looking at least another couple of months. I don't know what the lead time is for council, but we recognize that this is an election year, and we want to get it in before the rush. So whether that is April or May, I don't know. I mean, we're in your hands, Meredith, on that.
Yeah, we're trying to get it to April, May is about the timeline that we're looking at. But also we're working with the county and their TMP and some of those recommendations. So we just want to make sure that we're in alignment before we go to council. But that is where we've got it scheduled right now. So we will be back. Any more questions? I don't have any, Carolina.
No, I do not have any more either.
I see the mayor, she's popped on. Do you have any comments?
I want to thank RJ Burnside. It was a great presentation, and thank you to staff for this. It's really lots of information. There's lots of members of council on here tonight, so kind of like drinking from a fire hose, but we're going to digest all this, and we'll definitely have some questions and comments for you, and thank you so much.
Great. Yes, appreciate it. Please send your questions. So thank you all for your time tonight. We really appreciate it. And thank you, and have a great night.